Good morning, everyone. My name is Fei Zheng. I'm attorney at law based in Shanghai, China.
In this video, I'd like to give a brief introduction about tax law in China. Generally speaking, there are 18 categories of taxes in China, and among which I think 7 of them are the most commonly used and important ones. The first and the most important one is VAT, Value Added Tax. The scope of VAT includes sale of goods, services, intangible assets, and real properties, etc. Do keep in mind that the target of VAT is the transfer of the goods or services themselves. Moreover, the action shall occur in People's Republic of China as well. For example, Company A bought number 1 product and manufactured it into number 2 product and then sell it to Company B at a price of 116, which include the price 100 and the VAT 16. This is called buy-in VAT. However, after April 2019, the rate has been reduced to 13%. And then Company B, through its own production, sell products 4 to end customer at a price of 232, which includes the price of 200 and VAT 32. This is called sell-out VAT. As such, there are 2 approaches to calculate how much Company B shall pay the VAT to the government. Approach 1 equals the sell-out VAT deducted by buy-in VAT. And the second approach equals the buy-in and the sell-out price difference multiplied by VAT rate. That's if it's after April, then 13% it is. It's important to keep in mind that actions occurred outside the territory of PRC are not subject to VAT within the PRC. For example, first, services occurred completely outside PRC. And second, intangible assets completely used outside PRC, such as seller is in China and sells technology to buyer outside China is not subject to the VAT. A third example is lease goods used completely outside PRC is not subject to the VAT. However, for example, a UK company provides consulting services to a local Chinese company regarding international and domestic market consultation is subject to the VAT. Now, let's take a closer look at detailed different categories reflecting different rates. The first group is sales of services. Generally, it's 6%. Some specific categories have different rates, range from 0% to 16%. This can be categorized into 7 major groups, as set forth here we can see. The first group is transportation services. and the rate is 9%. Before April 2019, it used to be 10%. For example, wet lease. This means lease of transportation instrument together with its staff. Usually, it occurred in the case of ship leasing. On the contrary is dry lease, which means only lease of ship, not include its staff. Dry lease belongs to category 5, modern services, and is subject to rate of 13% at the moment. It makes sense that for wet lease, we have a larger cardinal number, so we have a relatively lower rate compared with dry lease. This also reflects the government's intention to encourage the company to recruit employees as many as possible. The second group is postal and telecom services. For postal and basic telecom, the rate is 9%, and for value-added telecom, the rate is 6%. The third group is construction services, and the rate is also 9%. The fourth group is financial services, and it has the lowest rate, which is 6%. Please pay the attention to the service of leaseback. This means the borrower sells the property to the lender and then lease back from it. The first step, i.e., the sale of property, is not subject to VAT, but the leaseback is subject to VAT, which is 6%, as we mentioned. Usually, after the term of lease, the title of the property belongs to the borrower. This is a method commonly used by many multinational companies as a method of financing. The fifth group is modern services. This contains a variety of services, including R&D services, IT, logistics support. Here, I'd like to draw your special attention to the leasing services. This include operating leasing and financing leasing of tangible goods, as well as lease of real property. For operating leasing, the rate is 13%. This includes advertising services. For example, we lease cars, and for financing leasing of tangible goods, the rate is 9%. And the rate for lease real property is also 9%, unless otherwise stipulated. For example, lease part of the construction or wall for advertisement is also lease of real property, which has 9% rate. However, lease of parking, or we have the toll, we can have a simplified method, which we will mention later. This includes 3% or 5% of the total income. The sixth group is livelihood services. This includes services provided to satisfy people's daily livelihood. For example, culture and sports, education and medical care, tourism and entertainment, catering and accommodation, and other livelihood activities. These traditional services also have 6% rate. The last group enjoys 0% rate, which means you don't need to pay VAT for those kind of services. That includes, for example, international transportation, service completely consumed outside PRC, and government subsidy, deposit interest, insurance compensation. For example, if a Chinese company transfer or license technology to a company located in Malaysia, then the Chinese company doesn't have to pay VAT at all. Please note that there are two kinds of taxpayers in China: general taxpayer and small-scale taxpayer. For all the categories and rates we mention here are applicable to general taxpayers. For small-scale taxpayers, we have a simplified approach that is 3% of the total income. And also, if each quarter the total income is less than 90,000, then the VAT is exempted. We will take a closer look at the difference between small-scale taxpayer and general taxpayer in detail in the next slides. And the next group is sale of goods, real properties, intangible assets, process, manufacture, and repair, labor. Generally, the rate is 13% now, and before April 2019, it's 16%, as we mentioned before. However, there are some specific categories which has different rate other than 13%, as we can see listed here below. According to registration management method for VAT general taxpayers and a notice on unifying the standard of VAT small-scale taxpayers, there are two kinds of taxpayer in China. If the taxable annual sales income of a company is over 5 million RMB, then it's qualified to apply for general taxpayer. For a general taxpayer company whose taxable annual income is less than 5 million RMB, then it can either choose to remain as general taxpayer or choose to transfer to small-scale taxpayer who enjoys a simplified approach for calculating VAT, i.e., 3% of total sales income, or 5% for real property. Moreover, a general taxpayer company could also choose to use this simplified approach. However, if it chooses to use this simplified approach, it cannot change back within the next 36 months. Of course, laws are not always that simple. Some special situations where, for example, I listed here at bottom of this slide, special taxpayers enjoys reduced rate other than general 3% and 5% rate. The Chinese government manage VAT through VAT invoice system. There are two kinds of invoices: general invoice and the VAT invoice. For VAT invoice, there is buy-in VAT number listed on that invoice, which you could deduct from the sell-out VAT. But for general invoice, there is no such number that's deductible. So let's take a look at this example. A small-scale taxpayer sell to a general taxpayer some services. So the small-scale taxpayer could either issue general invoice, which is non-deductible, or issue a VAT invoice, which is deductible. And then this general taxpayer sell the service to small-scale taxpayer and issue him general invoice. Why didn't he issue VAT invoice? Because it makes no sense for the small-scale taxpayer to get VAT invoice, as he paid VAT based on the total income of his revenue. So he doesn't need buying VAT at all. On the other hand, from the general taxpayer's perspective, the issue of either general invoice or VAT invoice will not influence the rate he shall pay. Now let's take a closer look at simplified taxation method, which is applicable to small-scale taxpayer or general taxpayer who chooses to use this method. This VAT equals total sales income, which does not include VAT, multiplied by tax rate. And the tax rate is 3% or 5%, depends on different categories, as we mentioned before. And generally, in this case, the buying VAT is not deductible, except some specific items, as we can see listed here. The VAT taxable price equals price after custom duties plus custom duties, and sometimes for some specific goods plus consumption tax, which we will talk about in detail later as well. And VAT equals the VAT taxable price multiplied by rate. Please note that there are some special rules and exceptions. For example, anti-cancer drug has a 3% rate only. And also for goods imported and retailed through e-commerce by individuals, there are also some preferential policies. Now let's take a look at some real case examples. First, in December 2018, a US company A provided internal control consulting services to a Chinese company B. A dispatched its US employees to B. All the services occurred in China. So this service is subject to VAT in China as well. The service contract stipulated that the service period is 8 months and the total service fee is 6 million, include VAT. As such, A is subject to VAT of the service price, which exclude VAT multiplied by the rate, 6%. Second, a shipping company is a VAT general taxpayer. In December 2018, bought spare parts. VAT invoice price is 3,600,000. Therefore, the buy-in VAT is 16%, which is 576,000. And the invoice income revenue includes domestic transportation, wet leasing, and salvage. As such, we could see from the previous categories that the transportation and wet leasing belongs to the transportation sector, which has 10% and now it's 9% tax rate. And salvage is a logistics support service, which belongs to the modern service, therefore has 6% tax rate. And then deducted by the buying VAT equals 880,000. Third, a restaurant is small-scale taxpayer. The total income in August of 2018 is 150,000 RMB. Then the bought-in food and materials, 30,000 RMB. The lease of commercial office income is 20,000 RMB. Therefore, in August, the restaurant is subject to VAT of lease income, which applies 5% tax rate, and the catering income, which applies 3%. And also please note the buy-in VAT, or what we have cost here, 30,000 RMB, is not subject to deduction. Fourth, a grocery store is a small-scale taxpayer. In December 2018, the sales of snack income is 66,950 RMB. And the sales of self-used fixed asset income is 17,098 RMB. Here, please note, as we also mentioned before, the sales of self-used fixed assets enjoys a preferential reduced rate, that is 2% as opposed to 3% of the total price. Number 5. In December 2018, a company imported 500 pieces of office furniture at a price of 10,000 per piece. The transportation fee is RMB 19,000. And in the same month, it sold out 400 pieces at a price of 18,000 per piece, donated 2 pieces to B company, invested 20 pieces in C company, and kept 4 pieces for self-consumption. It also paid another 13,000 transportation fees for sales. Now we presume the custom duty is 15%. So how much A company shall pay in August regarding VAT? First, we will calculate the buy-in VAT for importation. That's total importation price, including importation tax, plus the custom duties, and multiplied by the rate. The second step, we calculate the sell-out VAT. That include the pieces actually has been sold out, and also the pieces we have donated, plus the pieces for investment. All those pieces are considered to be sold out. But keep in mind here that the pieces for self-consumption shall not be considered as sold out. Last, we calculate the VAT that we shall pay to the government. That's item number 2. Sell out VAT deduct item number 3, the buy-in VAT.
That's our first episode regarding VAT in China. The next episode, I will give a brief introduction about consumption tax. If you have any further questions, comments, you may email me at the address below, or you may visit our website for further information.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.